All right, it looks like we're live. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the SCSA's Ask the SCSA. So we've been doing this webinar for a couple of weeks now, both on Tuesday and Thursday mornings at 9 o'clock. We've discussed a number of different topics in the last couple of weeks. The majority of them focusing, though, on our current COVID-19 situation and crisis here. So trying to provide our members with some good advice and some resources to use as we navigate through this time here. So we do have a little bit of a treat today where we are going to have a presentation from a couple of our panelists here, both with Joanne and Justin being included on that presentation. But before we get to that presentation, let's take a little bit of time here to introduce our panelists for today. So why don't we start off with Terry?
Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, again, my name is Terry. I'm a program auditor, and I've been with the SCSA for 3 years. Background would be industrial mechanics, electrical, heavy equipment, and culture. Back to you, Rick.
Excellent. Thank you, Terry. Adam, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, my name's Adam Drummond. I'm a trainer here over at the SCSA. Been teaching for the last 2.5 years for SCSA. My background is construction and adult education, and I'm here to help with any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. Joanne.
Yes, hi, I'm Joanne Davis, safety advisor here for 2.5 years as well. And prior to that, in construction field as a carpenter.
Excellent. Thank you, Joanne. And Justin.
I'm Justin, safety advisor. Background is carpenter, industrial, and commercial.
Thanks, Justin. And I should introduce myself as well. My name is Rick Rieger. I'm a senior safety advisor, or the senior safety advisor with the SCSA, and I'm based out of Regina. I've been with the association for a number of years. Will be 6 years in the summertime here. Before we get into the presentation, so if maybe Justin, you could get us set up here. Justin will be sharing his screen with everyone, so they'll be able to see the presentation. And when we do these presentations and when we do these webinars, we ask that those of you that are watching, if you could present your questions through the Q&A function of the Zoom meeting here and not the chat. So when we do have that chat option. However, that being said, we prefer that you put your questions forward in the Q&A. That way it retains those questions. If we need to access those questions later on, we can do so. So just please keep that in mind. So Justin, are you ready to get started here?
Absolutely. All right. Good morning, everyone. So what we're doing today is a presentation on COVID-19 worker readiness. So this is a fairly good presentation that before your workers are ready to enter back into the workforce or whatever time you so choose, this is a great program that you can use to help train your workers and get them ready so they have all the required information on COVID-19. So without any further ado, let's get started. So, so what we'll be going over today is COVID-19 regulations, what to do on site, social distancing, and personal protective equipment. So this will be conducted by myself and Joanne. So I'll do the first part here and Joanne's gonna kick in the second part here. So there will be some question and answer parts. So we'll ask you a question and then we will wait 10, 15 seconds and let you answer it kind of in your head or in the chat or whatever. And then we can kind of move forward from there. So all right, so COVID-19 has been declared a global pandemic and a public health emergency in Saskatchewan. It's a virus that can cause respiratory illness, which can lead to hospitalization with the possibility of death. Effects of COVID-19 are expected to be much more severe than seasonal influenza because most people will not have any immunity to the virus. Seniors and people with underlying health issues, including heart disease, diabetes, and lung disease, are at a higher risk, but young and healthy people are also at risk. So you guys may have heard a lot of this in news, but we're gonna go over it anyways. Common symptoms include fever, tiredness, cough, shortness of breath, and breathing difficulties. But there are some other symptoms which include aches and pains, sore throat, loss of taste and smell, and on rare occasions, people will report diarrhea, nausea, or runny nose. People with mild symptoms who are otherwise healthy should self-isolate. If symptoms feel worse than a standard cold, contact their medical provider or a COVID-19 information line, which is Health 811, for advice on testing and referral. As with most respiratory illnesses, most people with COVID-19 illness will recover on their own. Currently, there is no approved vaccine that protects against COVID-19, nor is there a specific treatment yet. Another note as well, there are people that are asymptomatic, which means they're not showing any symptoms whatsoever. However, as health authorities learn more about this virus, more information is coming out. Some individuals have been diagnosed positive with COVID-19 that are asymptomatic. They're showing different symptoms such as losing their sense of smell and taste. So at this point, it's very important to self-monitor, use the SASC Health self-assessment tool, and keep up to date with and follow government requirements that are set out. If you are not exhibiting symptoms, you do not need to be tested. So that's very important. So the routes of transmission is best described into 3 categories. So the first is droplets. So if somebody coughs or sneezes, they do generate droplets, which are airborne for at least a short period of time, but they don't float in the air. They generally fall to the ground within 1 to 2 meters. Anybody who is near the individual may risk breathing in these droplets. Physical distancing, so maintaining 2 meters of distance from other people at all times, will reduce the risk of this occurring. The second is close contact. This refers to physical contact with another person. So for example, shaking hands or hugging. When people cough or sneeze, droplets may deposit on their skin, clothing, especially if they cough or sneeze into their hands. People who are carriers of COVID-19 may transfer the virus from their hands or clothing to others during close contact. And lastly is surface contact. So surfaces can become contaminated when droplets carrying COVID-19 deposit on them, or when they are touched by a person who is infected. Surface contact involves a worker touching a contaminated object, then touching their eyes, nose, or mouth. Surface contact is important to consider because while it is not yet known exactly how long COVID-19 lives on surfaces, preliminary evidence suggests it can live on objects and surfaces from a few hours to several days. This may vary under different conditions. So, for example, the type of surface, temperature, humidity, or the environment. So, question time. So, what are common symptoms of COVID-19 right now? So we have A, fever, B, tiredness, C, cough, D, shortness of breath or breathing difficulties, and E, all of the above. Give you about 10 seconds to think about that. So if you answered E, all of the above, you are absolutely correct. The next question here is, if you are not exhibiting symptoms, you do not need to be tested. True or false? So the answer to that is true. So next we're going to get into regulations and response plans. So it's really important to know how it spreads, create a plan and procedure, conduct your work in the safest way possible. These first 2 steps are part of the process for creating an exposure control plan. If you are still working at this time, employers should have or are working on an exposure plan to ensure that all areas of work and job tasks have been assessed. Procedures, policies, protocols, and controls are in place to ensure that all chances of exposure have been brought to light and thoroughly thought through on how to complete a task as safe as possible. If this is something that you need help with developing that you haven't developed yet at this point, make sure you contact one of the advisors and they'll help you out with putting this together. So when it comes to your exposure control plan, you want to identify the exposure, assess the risk, control the measures, and conduct training. The Occupational Health and Safety Regulations, Section 85, discusses exposure control plans and who should be involved and what content needs to be in place. Granted, with this still being new, an unknown virus, your exposure plan will have to be updated as new information becomes available. Some items the exposure plan must include and be in writing will be identify any workers at the place of employment who may be exposed. Identify categories of tasks and procedures that may put workers at risk of exposure. Describe the ways in which infectious material or organisms can enter the body of a worker and the risks associated with that entry. Describe infection control measures to be used, and workers must be trained on the exposure plan. And again, that's in section 85 of the Occupational Health and Safety Regulations. All right, so when it comes to workplace exposure, this process will determine the level at risk of workplace exposure to COVID-19 for your workers in each area of their work. For example, this example is broken down into levels of exposure so you can prioritize and figure out the best controls. So your workspace, so where will workers be exposed to COVID-19 infected workers, and the job tasks. Decide on the job tasks and the worker's potential ability to limit exposure to COVID-19 infected people. On a minimal exposure job tasks, this is workers with no contact with COVID-19 infected persons in the workplace. So your job tasks that do not require close contact to another individual. Your lower exposure job tasks are workers who may be exposed to COVID-19 infected persons from time to time, in relatively large, well-ventilated areas. And workplace contact to another individual in job tasks that allow social distancing, right? So this is making sure that you keep that 2 meters and you're able to. Social distancing is kept from a distance greater than approximately 2 meters from another individual. Higher exposure job tasks. So this is workers who may have contact with symptomatic infected persons in small, poorly ventilated workspaces. Job tasks require close contact, 2 meters, with a client symptomatic with COVID-19. So this is more than likely referring to healthcare professionals. Well, here's an example of a risk assessment that can be used for pre-job use for overall start to finish tasks to help with planning out the project timelines, so that different trades can be spread out effectively, as well as it can be used daily for changing conditions. So you want to make sure this updates as new information changes. So your job task would be a receptionist in a public area. So we're talking about, an office setting. The potential risk right now we're talking about is COVID-19. The risk assessment identifies that the virus with meeting people, exposure distance equal to or greater than 2 meters. So as far as engineering or substitution, we would set up drop-off location. This might be in a vestibule or something like that, so that it reduces the amount of contact and the amount of people that are coming into the building right up to the desk. So your administrative duties would be hand hygiene, safe work practices, safe job procedures, social distancing, and worker training, which is very valuable. And the follow-up action required, this is at a minimum, training follow-up in a month, right? But as things change, you want to make sure that your workers are trained in that immediately. So we talk about the control levels of the regulations. It requires employers to implement infectious disease controls in the following order of preference. So first is engineering control. So we want to isolate the hazard, use protective barriers, and increase ventilation. Number 2 is administrative controls. So that's your safe work practices and procedures, respiratory and hand hygiene, and reinforce hand washing and use hand sanitizer. Obviously, hand washing is a better version of that, but in a pinch, you can use hand sanitizer. And personal protective equipment. So this is your last line of defense in this situation. So personal protective equipment includes providing gloves, glasses, respirators, proper cleaning, care, and maintenance, and training of PPE. So that training is different from the regular training that you give because we're dealing with a different hazard. So I have some more questions. What are elements to an exposure control plan? A, risk assessment and workplace exposure levels. B, infectious disease controls. C, practices, procedures, and policies. D, employee training. Or E, all the above. If you answered E, you would be correct. All right, the next question here. Regulation 85 requires employers to implement infectious disease controls in the following order of preference. A, PPE, administrative controls, then engineering controls. B, engineering controls, PPE, then administrative controls. Or C, engineering controls, administrative controls, then PPE. All right, if you answered C, you are correct. So I'm going to hand things off to Joanne, and she's going to discuss the last half of this presentation, starting with what to do on site. So Joanne, you're up.
Okay, let's talk about what happens on site with all this. What can we do? So one of the first things that we want to look at is practicing good hygiene. Everyone can help prevent spread of infectious disease by practicing good hygiene, and it's encouraged to implement the following measures. You want to wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. You could also use, like Justin said, adequate amounts of those hand washing stations or alcohol-based sanitizers that is at least 60% or more. You want to avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. Avoid close contact with people, maintaining that social distance of 6 feet. Coughing or sneezing into your sleeve or elbow and not your hands, and reporting flu-like symptoms to your supervisor immediately. Let's take a closer look at hand washing. So you do want to, again, wash your hands with warm water. You're going to apply soap, and the next part's really important, that 20 seconds of hand washing. You want to make sure you get your palms in the back of your hands, in between your fingers, underneath your nails, and don't forget your thumbs as well. After that, you're going to rinse well, dry with paper towel, and then making sure to turn off that faucet again with the paper towel and dispose. The next thing we want to talk about here is you want to be disinfecting and cleaning surfaces more frequently. So implement a sanitization schedule by using surface cleaning checklists specific to your job site. This will help you alleviate any missed items in areas and help you keep documentation that this has been done. So this is a resource that you can also find on our website to help you along with that. It's going to help you remember to keep areas such as site office trailers, tool trailers, tools, work and personal vehicles as well. You want to make sure that they're getting disinfected. So the next thing we're talking about is working on residential sites. You want to make sure you're staggered out trades. Scheduling will be an asset to alleviate any worker congestions or issues with proper distancing. You may have to lengthen the completion time of that project because you're going to have reduced workers, and maybe switch up your delivery schedules as well. Having a planned out schedule for when jobs need to be done by will be crucial to your success in keeping the workers safe with proper distancing and timing. Communication is really going to be crucial at this part. You're going to want to know the total number of people on site and where they are assigned work. You're going to take a look at start times, breaks, and lunches. They can be staggered as well. You want to avoid close contact. Generally, residential sites may not always have a lunchroom or job trailer. However, you still want to ensure that workers can take their breaks in isolated areas or in their own personal vehicles. You also want to have workers come in their personal vehicles. You want to maintain that 2-meter distancing, and with meetings, it's a good idea to have them outside and at least spaced out 6 feet between personnel. Even better idea, if possible, you can use video and phone systems for doing those meetings as well. Something else to take into consideration is going to be your orientations. You're going to want to have a limited number of persons at orientation. It's a good idea to use video orientation when possible. And when practical, move the orientation outdoors and conduct a verbal orientation for that site specific. So you're going to go over your regular items, PPE requirement, go over your policies and procedures and practices and emergency plans and your hazard assessments, but you're also going to be adding a few things that you want to pay attention to. You're going to discuss physical distancing, talk about the hygiene and location of the hand washing stations and hand sanitization. You're going to talk about what the company is doing at the site to promote a safe workplace and remind them that their health is important. The importance of reporting to a supervisor if they're feeling unwell and leaving site. So again, if you're going to be feeling unwell, any symptoms of the flu, need to report and do self-monitoring and conduct that self-assessment. Limit the number of workers and restrict who is allowed to enter office trailers or enclose 2 trailers. Another way to do this would be to post your phone number outside the door. They can contact you that way instead of coming in. Avoid sharing tools and equipment. If they must be shared, they must be cleaned and disinfected before being used. Another consideration you want to take on sites is visitors and deliveries. So any deliveries to site, you can either have the driver remain in the cab and unload the items, or the delivery driver could unload the items themselves at a specific location so there is no close proximity breached. Visitors to site, such as inspectors, could walk around and complete their inspection on their own. Once they're done, they can go over their findings over the phone or video chat or in separate vehicles through proper distancing. If signatures are needed, it's good to come up with a procedure where the documents can be signed electronically to avoid surface exposure. Health verification is also something that needs to be done. Use the Government of Saskatchewan COVID self-assessment tool questionnaire to verify that workers and visitors are not feeling sick. And so they are also aware of the symptoms so they can self-monitor. Request that any visitors to call and schedule in advance for a specific time before showing up to any site, and that we can be prepared. Next, we'll talk about occupied sites. When dealing with homeowners, whether it's going to be for warranty work, renovations, or general fixing and installation, see if it can be held off. If it's not crucial to be completed right away, if you don't need to conduct it, then you should postpone it if possible. You want to conduct a thorough phone call questionnaire before scheduling and determine the hazards of an exposure prior to accessing the site. Verification of health of homeowners, where they will be during the work when it's being completed, and making sure you have the proper PPE and hand sanitizer available is crucial. Also have a detailed cleanup procedure and payment and processing procedure. Ensure that work clothes are being washed and cleaned daily and are isolated until they can be washed. And have clean work clothes daily to avoid spreading to other residential sites. So here's some PPE in the final stages. Some things that we can do. You want to avoid touching surfaces you don't need to. You want to wear gloves and respirators. Wear disposable boot covers. Wear clean clothes or disposable coveralls when entering a new site, whether it be the finishing stages or a new site altogether. Avoid contact surface spreading, and then disinfect your work area when you are complete. Okay, so we do have a question here. We'll review some of that. How long should you wash your hands for effectiveness? So we have 15 seconds, 20 seconds, enough for suds, and it doesn't matter as long as you wash. Okay, and if you chose B, 20 seconds, so that is the correct answer. We have another question. If you do use hand sanitizer, what percentage level should the alcohol content be? 50%, 40%, 60+%, or 30%? And the answer for this one is C, 60 or more percent. Okay, so now we're going to get into social distancing. We've mentioned it a few times already. You want to maintain social distance of 2 meters, 6 feet. So some things you can do on site with this is you need to plan job tasks, limit the amount of time workers need to be in closer than 6 feet together. So when they do need to work close together, develop a safe job procedure for the task that requires that. When workers need to work in close proximity to each other, they should be wearing appropriate PPE, such as gloves, safety glasses, fitted N95 respirators, and disposable coveralls. The workers need to distance themselves from their co-workers if they need to cough or sneeze. Again, this should be done into their elbow or tissue. The tissue should be disposed immediately in a proper waste receptacle. Workers will also need to then thoroughly wash or sanitize their hands prior to going to work. When a task is complete, employees should thoroughly wash and sanitize their hands, and disposable PPE such as gloves, Tyvek coveralls, disposable respirators should be disposed of properly in a waste receptacle as well. Reusable items such as safety glasses and hard hats should be washed thoroughly. Remember to keep yourself updated on new information regarding COVID-19. The more we know, the more that we can put the best controls in place to prevent. The next thing we're going to go through here is some information from the Saskatchewan government website. We've highlighted an area where it has workplace information for COVID-19. And I'm going to just go over a couple points. There is quite a bit of information in that document. Feel free to check it out yourself as well. So workplaces are exempt from the restriction of indoor and outdoor gatherings of 10 or more people. 2-meter distancing between individuals in the workplace shall be maintained. If unable to maintain that 2-meter distancing, other measures such as self-monitoring of personal health should occur. Staff should also wash their hands often and practice good respiratory hygiene. This is covering coughs. You want to limit the exchange of papers, such as signing contracts and handling delivery notes. If documents must be exchanged, leave them on a clean surface for others to retrieve while maintaining 2 meters distance. Avoid sharing pens and other stationery. If necessary, make sure to disinfect. Again, from that document, I want to go over a situation when workers would be in the same vehicle together. It does have a few points on that as well. Want to encourage the same workers to ride in the same company vehicle every shift. If possible, workers should occupy the same seat in the vehicle for the entire shift, meaning you shouldn't be changing who's driving, and keep your spot. Workers should avoid physical contact and avoid sharing materials or equipment. Vehicles should be frequently cleaned and disinfected with appropriate approved disinfectant during the shift and in between each shift. Commonly touched surfaces such as steering wheel, dashboard, interior and exterior doors, handles, interior mirror, and any other surface should be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. Okay, so we have gone through quite a bit of information in that last little bit. Let's do a couple questions. What is a measurement required to maintain social distancing? We have 3 feet, 6 feet, 2 meters, B and C, or all of the above? So we do have a couple correct answers on this one, and it's going to be B and C. So 6 feet, 2 meters, you're going to hear quite a bit about those. Next question. What are some ways you can manage physical distancing on the site? So our options here, we have staggered out trades on site. Utilize and stick to planned out schedules. Take staggered breaks, lunch and start times. C is planning out delivery locations and procedures of materials brought to site. And D is having orientations or meetings outside and spaced out 6 feet between personnel, or possibly using video phone systems. And E would be all of the above. Give you a moment on that one. And again, all of these are correct. So all of the above, these are all ways that we can help manage physical distancing on site. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the PPE we might be using a little bit more these days. So let's take a look at our disposable respirators. I'm just going to go over the slide with you. So you want to choose a small, medium-sized face piece that fits your face. Being fit tested is important. You're going to pull the headbands loose. The metallic strip should be uppermost and pass your hand through the headband. Then you're going to put the mask on with the headbands should be one around your head and the lower one around your neck. You're going to then press the metallic strip on both sides with the forefingers and middle fingers on both hands. It's really important to do a seal check once you have put on your disposable mask, positive pressure checking. You're going to cover the mask lightly with both hands. Breathe with deliberation. Air should not leak out from the sides of the mask. And to do a negative pressure check, you're going to cover the mask again lightly with both hands, suck in the air with deliberation, and the mask should depress slightly inward. So on that note, I also want to mention that you want to make sure your hands are washed before placing a respirator on your face and dispose of your respirator after use. Do not try to clean the disposable respirator. This could damage the integrity in its function. The next piece of equipment we're going to go over a little bit here is gloves. So proper procedure to remove gloves, you're going to pinch and hold the outside of the glove near the wrist area. Peel down away from the wrist, turning the glove inside out. Third, you're going to pull the glove away until it's removed from the hand, holding the inside out glove with the gloved hand. 4, with your ungloved hand, slide your finger under the wrist of the remaining glove and do not touch the outer surface. Peel down away from the wrist, turning the glove inside out. Continue to pull the glove down and over the inside out glove that is being held in your hand and dispose of properly. Okay, so now we've covered a little bit of the PPE. Let's go over a test question here. Do you need to have fit testing for respirators, both disposable and half mask? True or false? You need fit testing. And the answer to that is true. You do need to have fit testing. Okay, moving forward. So we have learned and adopted many new practices and procedures in a workplace as these changes have occurred. And they are going to stay with us for quite some time, probably the next following few months or so. Some of these are going to include self-monitoring of personal health, physical distancing, detailed schedules, staggering out trades on site, including breaks, lunches, and start times, hand washing and sanitization stations, additional PPE use, proactive cleaning and sanitization. This is just to name a few of the differences that we have been doing over the last few months. Again, we're not sure on the timeline for everything, so this is probably going to be with us for some time. Communication and training in these new requirements is going to be essential to keeping our workers healthy and safe as we move forward. Okay. We do have quite a bit of resources on our website. So when you go to our website, this is what it looks like. And if you go to the top, it's highlighted resources and you press on that link, you're going to find that you can go to a COVID-19 coronavirus. When you click on that, you're going to see a variety of resources that have come out. So again, you're going to see some webinars that have been taking place. The list does go quite on, and we do have links to practices and procedures, best practices, and we do have quite a bit of links for other reputable resources as well. That is going to be good information to keep updated. So again, you can check out our website and you'll be able to find those there. And that brings us to a conclusion to our presentation. Thank you.
Excellent, right on. Thank you, Justin and Joanne. A lot of excellent information there, a lot of good resources, great strategies to use when on site and working within our industry. I'm just wondering if we're getting questions from our members as to how they would be able to access that information or that presentation. How would we be able to do that? Would we be looking at delivering that ourselves online as we did this morning? Would we be willing to share that information or that presentation with them? How are we moving forward with that?
Yeah, as of right now, I guess two options are available. Contact advisory services. If you go on our webpage, all our contact information is there. We'd be more than happy to deliver this presentation to your workforce over a Zoom meeting or Teams meeting. The other option too is that this is all being posted onto our social media. So obviously feel free to play this for your workers, send them the link to this, and get those views up to pass that information on.
Excellent, right on. Okay, we do have a number of questions that have come in here. So we'll start off with some of these here. And as we've done in the past here, if you're able to shed some light and answer these questions for the panelists, please do so. I'll ask the question out here, I'll read it, and then you can respond to them. So the first question here, if an employee is experiencing mild flu symptoms, should they still come to work? And then the second part of that question, should I require a sick note from the employee?
I can talk about that. We did cover that a little bit in the presentation. If you're experiencing flu-like symptoms, you need to self-monitor, call that health line 811 and do that checklist, that health checklist. They're not advising you to run to go see your doctor immediately. Follow those steps and then see if you need to be tested. And again, at this point in time, they're not asking people to go to the doctor for notes. We don't want overloading and spreading the virus more if that is the case.
Excellent. Thank you, Joanne. Second question here is coming in. I'm having a hard time finding hand sanitizer. Do you have any recommendations as to where I can get some?
I believe there's quite a few businesses now that are distributing hand sanitizer. I know Minnehaha Creek, they've started making some hand sanitizer, and I believe there's some other businesses. If I'm correct in saying, I think Eco Electric is selling it to their membership and things like that. So, I mean, there are quite a few places that are making this more available. More businesses, especially distilleries, are stepping up and creating large bottles of hand sanitizer that's definitely exceeding that 60% alcohol.
Right, yeah, thanks, Justin. And on our website, we did have some information that came out on where you could possibly get, and like Justin touched on there were a couple places that were available. So please take a look at our website and get those contacts. The next question here, who is responsible on a job site for all employees and subcontractors to adhere to all precautionary methods? So looking at when it comes to a job site, who has the most control and who has the most responsibility when it comes to precautionary methods?
Now, guess I'll talk about this one. So on a job site, you got your contractor, general contractor, prime contractor. If you're on a job site with primes, I mean, it's by legislated that they are in control of everybody's health and safety on site. So they're ultimately responsible for trying to adhere to all these precautionaries and enforcing those ones with the employees.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. this question here, is there a limit to how many workers can be on a site at a particular time? I know we had a little bit of discussion about this yesterday, and we had a little bit of clarification. Joanne, would you like to answer that one? I know you were part of that discussion.
Yeah, I can go into that. I did read a little bit about what the government of Saskatchewan says. It does have a whole lot of, you do hear that you don't want to have more than 10 people gathering, but that is for gatherings. When it comes to the job site, if you can maintain that 2-meter distancing and follow the proper precautions, they don't necessarily give you a limit as long as you're following that distancing and wearing the proper PPE and have procedures when you are working closer together.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, and that's why it's so important, even with the presentation that the two of you did this morning, we've been getting some really good news, I would say for sure, some positive news out of the Saskatchewan government here as to what our cases have been doing, and that the trend has been that they have been going down here, even to the point where Premier Moe has been talking about looking at expanding the allowable list of businesses, and that he may, or that he wants to come up with a more cleared list for next week here. So that's always good news, that's positive news, but we need to really be vigilant with what we've been doing to get us to this point where we've been able to flatten that curve and see some successes and some wins. So with the presentation that you two just gave here, and even just what you're talking about, Joanne, with the amount of people being on site, but if there is, still keeping all those precautionary measures in place, especially when it comes to those physical distancing and those hygiene practices. That's for sure something that we need to take a look at and make sure that we're still being really on top of and vigilant with.
Hey, Rick,
Yeah.
just really quickly, just on the topic of this, the presentation and information that's available. If you go on our website under the resources tab and look for the Saskatchewan Standardized Protocol, which came out, this has got a ton of information. A lot of it's what's included in our presentation, and then some to help you and businesses develop procedures that surround this COVID-19 situation with working on site.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you. All right. We do have another question here. This one was asked a couple webinars ago. We do not have anyone in particular from program services. We do have Terry as an auditor. And maybe he's been involved in this conversation. Lori had been part of this last time. How does the remote NCSO exam work, and what do I need in order to take the test at home? So I know this was covered a little bit. It may have been last time or the time before. So Terry, do you have any information on that?
Well, you're right. It's probably better to ask someone from admin. However, yes, it's a good question because yes, you can now write the NCSO exam through remote proctoring. So first step for sure, you can go get all the information off our website, contact program services. So that's SCSA program info at scsaonline.ca. So, and the information's on our website. So first of all, you're going to contact program services because they're going to make sure all the criteria is met to write that NCSO exam. And then they'll be set up through Sask Polytechnic. And it tells you right there on the website as well, things you need, like to make sure you have a good internet connection, computer with video and voice, so that you can make sure everything will work to write the exam. But all the information is definitely on the website, and contact program services first.
Excellent, right on. Thanks, Terry. Next question that has come in here. If one of my employees shows symptoms, do I need to shut down and isolate my whole company, or just that individual until results come back? This was touched on a little bit in our presentation, and Joanne touched on it a little bit more. Would there be anything to add to that, Joanne? Any insight that you can give to that? So talking more about, do I need to shut down and isolate my whole company, or just that individual until the results come back?
Yeah, if you have an employee that is showing symptoms, again, they're going to want to follow what we said in the presentation, call that number, do that testing and go get the actual testing. In the meantime, you just want to make sure that you're following all your procedures, and when tests come back, then you're going to follow the government's protocol if it was positive onto what to do next. But maintaining your social distancing and proper sanitization is really key in this situation until test results get back.
Okay, thank you. The next question here. I have policies and procedures in place for COVID-19, and some of my employees are refusing to come back to work. Do I have the ability to discipline them or let them go? So this is a little bit of a difficult question. I know we had a bit of a discussion regarding this or a very similar question or scenario yesterday. What we discussed with that is nothing has changed as far as the right to refuse goes. So within Saskatchewan, and we teach this in our courses, employees have the right to refuse unusually dangerous work. So there is a process in place that needs to be followed if there is any work refusal. So as far as disciplinary action, nothing has changed as far as the right to refuse. There's still a process in place, and there's different stages. Ideally, that should be resolved at the company level, supervisor level, and then it has to, if it's not resolved, go up that chain of command, and then ultimately there's exterior or external people involved in that process, and then a decision is made. So was there anything that any of you on the panel can add to that to help answer that question? No, it's yeah, it's one of those difficult questions. We're in a different time now where we do have there's fear and different stages of where we've been in this pandemic, and rightfully so. There's fear, but that being said, like I've also touched on here, we have been having positive news, especially within our province here. So again, the precautionary measures are the thing to keep in mind here, and we have a ton of resources where we're talking about the things that we can do to really limit or minimize the risks to exposure of this virus. Can my company be fined for having more than one worker in a vehicle? We've talked about this a little bit before. This came up a couple of weeks ago. Joanne, I see you are maybe ready to answer this question.
Yeah, I can just go over again. We discussed it a little bit in the presentation that they do have, the government, Saskatchewan did put out recommendations that when you do have the situation where you have to be in the vehicle together, things you can do, like keeping your same spot and doing the proper sanitization in between and so forth. So they do have recommendations in place for you to follow, that you must follow when in the same vehicle. So they are allowing more than one person in a company vehicle. You just need to make sure that you follow their recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Right, I have questions regarding my core program. Who do I contact, and is this info on the SCSA website? So we do, Justin already kind of referred to some of this stuff here, where we do have our information on our website. So throughout this time, we have continued to work with members. We're trying to contact and have to keep up our relationships with our members and with our core companies the best we can. We've done it through phone conversations, phone calls, emails, and that sort of thing. I do have our numbers here, and again, this is on our website. So if you do have any questions or concerns, whether it's regarding core or anything else safety related, if you need to get in contact with someone, whether it's our training services, program services, advisory services, please feel free to contact us. The website to contact us is scsainfo.ca. scsaonline.ca. So sorry, that's the email to contact us. Again, scsainfo@scsaonline.ca. Or you can call us at our office numbers. We still have people and employees taking our calls. The Regina number is 306-525-0175. And our Saskatoon office, 306-652-0907. We also have a toll-free number. That's 1-800-817-2079. So if you call our offices, we will have someone that can get you into touch or into contact with the appropriate person that can help you out with whatever it is that you have questions with.
Hey, Rick. I just wanted to mention everybody that we will today have a document being released on in our resources section on safe vehicle sharing, just on that last question. So just keep have everybody, keep checking back to our website, because we're constantly updating our website with new resources that are going to help everyone through this.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Good point. And kind of like how you mentioned there, we do have a lot of things that are changing as we go along. Things are evolving. Our company has evolved in the way we're reaching out and contacting our members. Adam, if you wouldn't mind just could you give a little bit of an update as to what training services have been working on and doing? We had a little bit of a discussion already earlier today as far as our in-classroom training courses being available online here. So if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of an update on that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was going through some of the questions, and there is some questions here on particular training. So for everybody, just an update. Last week was our first online class that we did. We did it on safety management. Actually, as we're doing this, there's another class going on. It's Occupational Health Committee Level 1, being taught by one of our other trainers. And everything's looking pretty smooth. And our department has now come up with a training schedule, which is being sent off to be approved and all that good stuff. It looks, we're getting there. We're going to be being able to start doing online training for everybody. It is, it's going to be limited classes. We're slowly getting all the classes to be adjusted so that we can be able to present them on a computer. But for the most part, we should be up and running and training fairly quick. You'll see more and more. Come check the website, just like what Justin was saying. You'll see our calendar. You'll see that we'll have more classes added onto it. So keep on checking. There probably won't be anything new today or tomorrow, but next week we should be seeing some stuff. But if you don't, just hold off. And if you do have any other questions, give us a call. We are also reaching out to some of our other clients to help us out with joining us in our training. But as it goes on, we will be adding more and more classes.
Excellent, thank you. And then how is there, or is there much difference or any difference from the online courses as opposed to the in-classroom courses as far as content within those individual courses?
Yeah, as far as the content's concerned, we should be pretty much looking at the same stuff. There might be a couple of tweaks here and there just because we can't do that kind of stuff virtual or online anymore. But for the most part, everything's going to be the same. We have, with this program that we're using here, there's a lot of options there that kind of mimic the class. The only difference is we're not going to be there in person. There's still going to be group activities. I'll be able to, our trainers will be able to break you off into your groups. You'll be able to do your group activities, come back. There's still going to be tests. You'll still get certificates, all that good stuff. So for the most part, really, there shouldn't be anything that's going to be too big of a change for our members.
Excellent, great. Well, that's good to hear, because if we're able to offer our members that type of training, I would think that there'd be a lot of people that would want to take advantage of that. So excellent stuff, thank you. Getting back to a couple of the questions here, we do not have a lot of time left. We're about 5 minutes here away from 10 o'clock, so we try to shut this down at the hour here. We do have quite a few questions. We probably won't get to all of them yet, but just go through some of them here. Do you have toolbox talks available for COVID? So this would be more for the advisors.
Yes, we do have quite a few toolbox talks for COVID-19, and there's more coming out. They're just in the process of their final stages. So again, you need to check out the website under resources, COVID-19, and scroll down. You're going to see quite a few resources, and those include toolbox talks on various items.
Hey, Rick, just looking now, I mean, we have different ones on disinfection protocol when entering your home from the public, disposable respirators, removing disposable gloves and masks, which were both topics during the presentation, ergonomics when working from home, mental health and stress during COVID-19. So the whole month of April has been a very busy month for creation of toolbox talks. And like Joanne said, that's all found underneath the resources tab under toolbox talks.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Yeah, we do have a lot of questions here. I'm looking at the questions that are posed to us here. A lot of them are very pointed and specific. More when it comes to cleaning of certain items. There's some questions that I'm just kind of summarizing them here. When it comes to, you know, what's the best practice for cleaning contact surfaces? Should we be using hand sanitizer rather than soap and water, washing stations, things like that? Any insight to add to that, either Joanne or Justin?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the hand washing and hand sanitizer. I think Justin did mention this earlier as well, that hand washing is very effective. And when you're not close to that hand washing station, and that's when your hand sanitizer comes into play, we're finding that hand washing is crucial. But hand sanitization will work as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And actually, I have a question here from Barb, our RSC chair here in Regina here. This one, maybe Joanne, if you could answer it here. Can you go over the guidelines again regarding workers traveling in the same vehicle to and from job sites, and where exactly was that information on the Government of Sask website? So this was covered in the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have the exact location for that?
Yeah, I do. And I'm just going to go grab that.
And then while you're grabbing that, she did say, and this was also on our website, Smooth 42 Distillery is doing a really nice job with the hand sanitizer. So that was something that you were referring to, Justin.
Yeah, and just on the topic of the disinfectant and cleaning, while Joanne's bringing that up, if you go on to the Canada.ca website, they do have a full comprehensive list of all the products that can be used for cleaning, what company makes them, and the product form, whether it's a solution or an aerosol. And there's a gigantic list of all products in relation to COVID-19 and disinfectant. So, I mean, it gives you a lot of options to figure out what's available to you and the application you need to use it in.
Okay, so I'll share my screen for 1 second if I can.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we can see it here now, Joanne.
Okay.
Just while Joanne's loading this up here, Terry, was there any updates before we get to the end of our webinar here from the auditing department?
For sure, just to make sure everyone is aware that we are almost business as usual. We are accepting all your audits, whether it's yourself, your maintenance, your company internal audits. They can come in electronically. We can go through those. We can go through your manuals. And we are actually in the process right now setting up so that we can do remote C-Core external audits. So that's in the process right now. So yeah, it's going. We've adapted quickly.
Right on. Again, yeah, just like we were talking about, we're evolving and trying to do what we can to assist our members throughout this time here. So, Joanne, are you able to?
Yeah, can you see a little bit of that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so Saskatchewan government, and it's under resources, and then you go to COVID-19, public health measures and workplaces, and that's where you're going to find the document of COVID-19 workplace information. And in that document, you would just scroll down. In that document, you would just scroll down until you see transportation and so forth.
Excellent. Thank you, Joanne. All right, this takes us to the end of our webinar for today. So thank you to the panelists. Thank you for the presentation. And thank you for those that were watching, whether it be through Zoom here or we were on Facebook today. So we did get that going and working. So if people aren't able to see this or only caught parts of it, we will have the recording on our website as well. So again, thank you everyone for participating, for attending this event, and we can hopefully see you again next Tuesday. Thank you.